into the Grant town site, the old historic township site there, where we stopped for lunch. From there we headed back out onto the High Plains Road ever so briefly, took the Hibernia track across to the Conway track that runs down to the Kingswell Bridge. Now if you've driven the Conway track, you know that it's quite a steep track with a bit of a clay sandy base, so it was fairly slippery and slow and steady. Definitely won the race there. From there we headed around to the Billy Goats Bluff track and took that up to the Pinnacles. I've driven Billy Goats Bluff probably 4 times in the last few years. This was far and away the most difficult time that I've had driving that track. It hasn't been graded in a while. There were some big steps that hadn't been there even 12 months ago. So another good example of how conditions change. But let's get into the video. Should have some good footage to share with you guys from this iconic part of the high country. So thanks for watching and hope you enjoy this video. So we're getting down to about halfway down the Conway track. Still just rocky and gravelly. Traction's still been good. We're not down to the very bottom section yet. The weather is teasing us with glimpses of blue sky up above the mountain range, but I'm still not sure whether it's going to be worth our while trying to go up to Billy Goats today or whether we should leave that for tomorrow. Yeah, really not sure on that one. So anyway, we'll play that by ear and see how we go. So yeah, just edging our way down here. It's not as sandy as I remember, but that's probably because it's very wet. It does feel a little slippery, but we're just taking it very slow and steady. There's a couple of rock steps there. There goes the cameras off the front seat. It's all good. So we're sliding in some ruts here now, but this next section flattens out somewhat, so all good. Do I look nervous? It's probably because I am. Still just working our way down the Conway track, taking it very slow and steady. It's very steep, trying to be a little bit slippery just in the conditions at the moment. Had a couple of gnarly hills that we sort of came up over with some dugout wombat holes on the other side. A little bit of slipping, but slow and steady, not being in a hurry is the order of the day. This is Bruce coming down a section of the Conway track that I wasn't able to film due to my camera issues. That noise that you can hear, his car's actually meant to be making that noise. So this is Bruce's 200 series utilising the maximum control for the hill descent control. Basically, this thing's got a button for everything. He can set the speed, press the button to start the hill descent control, and he basically doesn't have to touch the brakes or the accelerator at all. The car just controls its own speed. As you can see, very wet, very slippery on this section of track, which I was spewing I didn't get footage of. GoPros are great when they work, but when they play up, it's really frustrating. And yeah, just thought I'd share this for those of you who haven't been in a 200. It's just quite amazing the noise it makes as it controls the brakes and the wheel speed coming down this hill, but makes it incredibly safe in what is pretty tough conditions to be doing a descent like this. So yeah, really cool. So after the Conway track, we're heading alongside the Crooked River there. So just on the right you can see that famous Crooked River crossing that lots of people cross instead of the Kingswell Bridge. to date, I still have never driven across that particular Crooked River crossing, and today was not going to be that day. The river was up fairly high and flowing well, so definitely a day to take the bridge, that's for sure. And as we turned onto the Kingswell Bridge here, we actually saw Leo and his family in their 79 coming the other way. We ran into these guys earlier up on Blue Rag, and they were looking to get over towards Lycola and really weren't sure of the best way to go, and elected to follow us and come up over Billy Goats Bluff and the Pinnacles, just dodging a couple of cows there. The weather on this day was really changeable. We'd had rain, we'd had periods of not rain, the sky came out nice and clear and blue, so we really at any given moment didn't know what we were in for. And even at this point we were still just playing it by ear, deciding we weren't sure whether we were going to tackle Billy Goats or not. We're thinking we probably were, but we thought we'd go and have a look and make a decision from there. Just another little bridge with a little river crossing if you so desire, on the way from Kingswell Bridge through to Billy Goats Bluff Track. It's not that long a drive, it's probably 6 or 8 k's, and it's mostly pretty easy going. This section's semi-sealed, mostly I think because there's not a lot of room. It's been cut into the hillside there pretty well. Reminds me actually of sections of the Crooked River Track between Talbotville and Kingswell Bridge actually. But yeah, it's quite a nice drive along here. And it's not too many more kilometres and you find yourself at the start of the Billy Goats Bluff Track. There is a sign here, it's a little bit hard to see, so you really have to sort of keep an eye out for it. There's a little visitors information board there as well, which wasn't in frame. We did talk to a couple of people there that had turned around and actually decided they'd gone a certain way up the track and come back. So here we are starting Billy Goats. The weather's looking good, the track's still wet. Just talked to a guy down the bottom, he was with a group of 5 or 6, the other 5 sort of pushed on. He turned around mostly because he had a lot of weight up high. So he had a roof rack with some gear and then a rooftop tent sitting up on top of the rails on his rack. So he did say it was a little bit slippery and there were some wombat holes on one section prior to the helipad. So we'll just see what that's like. And he needed a bit of juice and he just wasn't comfortable doing that, so sensible call. You know, everybody knows their own vehicle and everybody's vehicle handles and is balanced a little differently, so and he doesn't normally drive stuff like this with the rooftop tent on, he said, so that's a factor too. So anyway, we're into it. Very different. Like, this will be my 3rd time up Billy Goats and I've never driven it wet, and already the track is just so different to what it's normally like, so yeah, really interesting. But so far traction hasn't actually been an issue. She's definitely rutted out though, definitely been worn and scalloped out. We just dropped back to first and we're doing a job climbing. So yeah, this was very different last time we drove it, approximately 12 months ago, which was one of the first videos I uploaded to my channel actually. So by all means go back and have a look at that. I think you'll see the track in very different conditions when you do that. This lower section was nowhere near as sort of eroded or worn out as it is here. Of course, last time I drove it, it was a 35-degree day. This might even be the section that he was talking about. So yeah, that was definitely the section where the guy we ran into with the rooftop tent had some trouble. This is Bruce's second go, and you can see, you get a good idea here of just how slippery it is. I mean, his 200 is sort of pretty weighty, and you can see he's trying to steer to the right, looks to the left coming towards us, and the track's just pushing.
More berries, more juice.
Clearly I can't film.
Keep coming. That's it, keep it coming. Keep the juice on. You're there.
And that was the main thing with that obstacle. It really just you needed to be prepared to give it a fair bit of mumbo to overcome just how slippery it was and get up and over it.
There's not much to winch off here.
So as you can see, Leo and his family there in their 79, just with all the weight they've got on that thing, I think he had the 4.5 ton.
Tyre to the right, right hand down.
GVM upgrade on that.
Right hand down.
The safest option here really was to winch, and there really wasn't a lot to winch off.
Just let the winch pull you up over that. You should be good.
Even there you can see that front left tyre just lifting, which was making it hard to steer. So we did reset the winch just to pull him back onto the track a little more straightly.
Yep, just let the winch do its job. Left hand down. He's over.
So there was a tricky, slippery little bit of the track to get up and over, and it was certainly nothing like that last time we drove it, and that was just maybe a kilometre in. I definitely remember this hairpin corner here from last time we drove it. And as you can probably tell, we took a little while helping those guys up over that section. The track has dried out a little bit more, so that's not a bad thing at all. And as always, look, the camera's not doing this any justice at all. This is a steep, steady section of climb here. Most of Billy Goats you're going up for most of the time, and as I said, the camera here, even mounted on the car, is probably not doing this justice. Your car's working pretty hard to climb these sections. Yeah, we certainly didn't have any traction issues from here really all the way through now to the helipad. It was just the whole track was a lot more chewed up, and the rock was a lot more exposed than I remember it, particularly on these lower sections of track. And look, that's pretty indicative of a lot of the low sections, gravel, a little bit of exposed rock, nothing too gnarly, all pretty drivable. It's a little bit lumpy in sections. You can see the car moving a little bit there, but again, if you're steady on your throttle control, the tyres will do their job and get you where you need to go. So a lot of people talk about the helipad being halfway. It's not quite halfway, and you just saw there passing through the frame the track up from the helipad. So the rule of thumb is if you get to the helipad and you're not sure, it's probably a good place to turn around and leave the second half, because it only gets tougher from the helipad upwards. It's a pretty straightforward run. up a nice wide section of track up to the helipad. And again, the track from the helipad down to the bottom is generally a lot wider and easier for overtaking than the higher section of the track. So initially coming down off the helipad there, you've got a fairly steep descent, and these little rock steps, I don't think they were even there last year when we drove this. I remember this being steep, but I don't remember any little rock steps like that. Just keeps getting interesting. I guess that's why we keep coming back, isn't it? A couple of little wombat holes there that have been dug out by people coming the other way. Good time to enjoy this downhill section coming off the helipad, because it is one of the few downhill sections between here and the top. And as you can see, once you start climbing, a lot of these climbs are just really, really long. And some of them, like this one, they start off nice and easy. It's just a nice gravel road, really. And then as you get up, it gets rockier. And then this particular trip, there was a lot of rock steps. You know, a lot of challenges, making it much more interesting. And although the track looks pretty dry in the footage, it was still a little damp in places as well. And look, I think I've left this whole hill in this section of the video just to give you an idea, if you haven't driven Billy Goats before, just how long some of these hills are. Like, they're just steady climbs, just going on and on and on. So you really want to make sure the cooling system on your vehicle has been well serviced. Again, first time I drove Billy Goats, I did have some overheating problems. Turned out, thanks to other driving I'd been doing, the radiator and intercooler were around 50% blocked up with mud and grass and insects and what have you. So since getting that serviced and getting that cleaned out, the cooling system's been fine, which is what the Pajeros are known for. They're known for not running hot and not overheating, so certainly a good thing to get sorted. Surprise, surprise, there's another long rocky hill. And you can see here, this is sort of a little chewed up and a couple of little rock steps here. There's a fair bit of loose rock sitting up on top as well, so you did have to think a little bit about your tyre placement, your wheel placement going through some of these sections. Good thing is, still on these sections here, you've got plenty of options for line choice. I think the key thing with this track, any of the tracks really, is you've just got to be patient, take your time, and not try and drive it faster than the track's really designed to be driven. So you can see there the helipad in the distance and the descent, and then this is the first big climb. Now this is unfortunately shot on my phone, which doesn't do zoom particularly well, so apologies for the video quality there. Bruce making it look easy in his 200.
So still going up Billy Goats Bluff here. It is 5:15. It has been so much more gnarly than the last time I drove it. I don't know whether it's the rain or lots of traffic or whatever, but all the rock steps are just worn out. Bigger rock steps, gnarlier ruts, bigger rock climbs. as usual, I don't think any of this is going to really come out on the camera footage. Yeah, still climbing up into the clouds. Not too much further to go, fortunately, given the time of day.
So you can see how quickly the weather was changing as it does up in the high country. You know, a couple of frames ago we had blue skies and sunshine, and as we've worked our way up a little higher and a little higher, we've we're basically in the clouds now, and visibility is decreasing markedly, which is what I was worried about when we were starting Billy Goats at the bottom, because the whole point of, it's great to enjoy the journey and enjoy the challenge of driving the track, but you really want to get up on the Pinnacles Lookout and enjoy the view as well. So again, just one of many rock climbs along this section of Billy Goats. As you can see, it's just a long, steady rock climb up the whole thing. It's a little bit soft just through there. Been chewed up a little bit. Managed to pick a line sort of spanning that. Now what's maybe not super apparent coming up here is there's a massive big rock step with a rut in front of it running diagonally across the track. So I had decided to try and sneak past on the right hand side there, and as you could probably see there, that was not going to happen. The rear left wheel sort of fell in that rut before I was fully past it, and got a good sized wheel lift there on the front right. Now this is a really good illustration of just how hard it is to get traction sometimes on these steep climbs when you lose your momentum. So at the moment I'm reversing back down to try and take a different line. With the benefit of hindsight, clearly I should have just taken the left hand line and spanned that rock step and rut. I thought the Pajero being fairly narrow wheelbase, I could sneak past on the right, but that wasn't to be. So I've just reversed up and looking at my line options here and figuring out which way I'm going to go. Tried to start off, and as you can see there, I can't actually get going forwards. I can't get traction from this point to even move forward. So yet when I drove up here, there was no issue on this section of track. We just kept going. So it's something to keep in mind when you're driving some of this steeper stuff. If you can avoid stopping, definitely a good thing. So yeah, it was just a case here of reversing down what was a pretty steep, gnarly section of track, and again, just can't quite get going again. So yeah, not really a lot of choices other than to try and reverse down a little further, but clearly you want to stay on the track. So I'm trying to get over to the left and get the tyres on those rocks so they're not on the loose gravel. And again, can't get going from here either. Now you'll have to take my word for it, because we stopped there for a little while as I looked at the options. I got going, took the left hand line and drove that readily enough, which was good. And I didn't get footage of Bruce driving it. He drove it first go after watching me fail, because he was through it before I could jump out and film. As I said on the insert video before, it's after 5 o'clock and it was getting late in the day and we're expecting it to get dark. So by this point of the trip, we're really just trying to get to the top while we've still got some daylight to try and see if there is much of a view to be had. Keeping in mind this was filmed back in very early January, so the days are a little longer back then than they are now. can see it just kind of keeps going. It's a really fun track to drive. Look, I think we took a couple of hours, but that was sort of continuing. That was including helping the guys with the 79 up over that with their winch. That was probably a 20-minute stop there. But you're generally going to want to leave yourself a good hour and a half to 2 hours to drive this track most of the time, I think. You know, it's not unusual to get caught up with traffic coming the other way. Again, we were lucky in that situation because it was late in the afternoon, so most of the people that were going to drive it had driven it and were off the track by the time we were heading up. But yeah, the first time, last time we drove it last year, the first time we filmed it, yeah, we must have passed 30 or 40 cars. And that was largely because we were driving it in the middle of the day. You can see the sheetrock there, just the edges of the rock exposed. Like, you know, you can see how much the car's moving trying to get traction there. And yes, there's more rocks and more climbing. Look, I haven't put the whole track in here obviously, but it is a fairly long video, but I really wanted to show you guys some of the really long climbs and just how rocky and gnarly the Billy Goats Bluff track is at the moment. I'm sure they'll get it and grade it probably soon, but it's certainly a much more challenging drive than the first time I drove it sort of 3 years ago. And I didn't even have a winch on the Pajero back then. So you can see how lumpy this section is. Didn't have too many traction issues here, managed to pick some decent lines, keep the wheels on the ground. As I've said before, it's one of the things you got to think about with an IFS vehicle. You don't have a lot of flex, you don't have a lot of downward travel, so you do need to pick your lines. Having a rear diff lock helps, but I don't use it perhaps as much as I should. Clearly the car doesn't steer as well when the rear diff lock's on, so when you've got these hills where you're climbing up around corners, I usually don't engage the rear diff lock. Couple of loose rocks there on the track. And again, you can see the sheetrock there with the edges of the rock just exposed. Like, this was nothing like this 12 months ago. It's a shame we're up in the clouds and got such a whiteout, because as you get to the top portions of Billy Goats Bluff Track, there's some amazing opportunities for views, you know, even before you get to the Pinnacles Lookout. It is that kind of track that every time you think you've crested a hill and oh, that must be the last hill and you're at the top now, you come around a corner and you realise, no, there's another long climb still ahead of me. Good place to make sure you've got your tyre pressures down a little bit when you're driving on such exposed rock. There's some sharp edges there, particularly on sections like that. And you can probably get a sense with how much the weather's changing. Looking at those trees, you can see how much they're moving. The wind was really coming in, weather was closing in. We were really wondering what we were going to be in for weather-wise while we're still on this track, and was it going to start raining again, and was it going to start raining heavily? Again, you can see the car moving, just working, climbing up over those rock steps. looking at this footage, maybe this explains why I recently had to replace one of the front wheel bearings and the swivel joint in one of the upper control arms. Really are working our way, getting closer to the ridge line and the neck. The neck's the section of track. Somebody's firewood there on the track. Always good to keep an eye out for that. Section of track where it narrows right up and you've got basically a drop off either side. Usually a great spot for photos and views from Billy Goats, but not today. So we're just about approaching the section that I call the neck anyway. I don't know if anyone else actually calls it that. And again, this section of track was just so much rougher. I've inset there from the last video. You can see it was basically like a two-wheel drive road last time. Speed's not the same, obviously, because the track's so much rougher this time. But you certainly get the idea, and also the difference in how much you can see. It's just chalk and cheese. Like, look at this almost off-camber rock step here that we're driving over on the main frame compared to the two-wheel drive road last time. Now they do actually kind of sync up here because we had to wait for the Amarok on the old video, but you get no sense of that view out to the left or anything that we've got on the inset video footage. And yeah, we're just coming up on the main frame to that little parking space there on the left, which on the inset frame you can see that Amarok we ran into last time. He's just reversed in there. So yeah, chalk and cheese, completely different. So it's not too difficult to drive between, once you get past that section from there through to the Pinnacles. There is this bog hole which I only vaguely remember from last time, to be honest. But yeah, it was certainly a lot bigger there, and of course we were there, so I was going to drive it. There is a bypass track, and Bruce and Leo both elected to take the bypass track, which is cool. It wasn't actually as slippery. You can get a sense there in that long shot of the vehicle, though. You know, it's a decent step down. The bottom of that wasn't as soft or as slippery as I thought it might have been, though. And once you were down there, yeah, driving out wasn't too much of a big deal. Just to give you an idea of what that looks like from inside the vehicle, here's the GoPro footage of that same bog hole. There's Bruce filming. And that's the bypass track off to the left there. Just ease the front two tyres down and then take it steady till the back comes down. It's one thing with the Pajero coming down, things like that, you do tend to hit the tail end, which is why I've got that Raslar bar on the back, but fortunately not this time. So from here, it's not too difficult to drive up to the Pinnacles Lookout. This very quickly turns into pretty much a two-wheel drive road after this initial section that's a little bit rocky. And again, it was clear there'd been a bit of rain up here because there's certainly a few puddles on this section of track. Still some evidence of the bushfires from a couple of years ago. said, yeah, the track was a little wet, but just puddles. The track itself wasn't slippery or anything at all. Very drivable. And yeah, the closer you get to the Pinnacles, the more it turns into a road. And just up here, I think this should be the turn off. Yes, it is. So this is where we turn back onto the main road, which is the main road from Lycola up to the Pinnacles. So just waited there a little bit for the guys to catch up to make sure they could see me make the turn and not miss the turn. And yeah, the closer we got to the Pinnacles, the higher we got, the more the clouds seemed to close in. Now, we ended up camping just there on the right. That's a little campsite, not too far from the Pinnacles at all. It's about 300 meters on. I think this is where my GoPro decided it really wasn't going to film anymore just after this. So yeah, it's literally about 200-300 meters on. So we did get up there. As you can see there, it's a whiteout. There's Bruce and me on the fire tower at the Pinnacles next to the trig point. And we did get a little bit of footage up there. You can see from the trees how much the wind's moving and the clouds moving in and out. So we get glimpses of Crooked River.
It's Crooked River down there.
And some of the other areas.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was really just glimpses at this point. As you can see, the clouds coming back in, and pretty soon you can't see much of anything.
Here we are, set up camp, just not far from the Pinnacles Lookout actually. So got the Coleman tent set up there. Just put a skewer on the barbie there to cook for pre-dinner snack. Bruce is set up over there with his hiking tent. And yeah, we just set up a fire over here where somebody else had a fire. That's my little camping stool there. It's the one I take with me on the solo trips in the car. I've got a bigger one, sort of a little bit like the one Bruce has got there, that I use with the camper trailer. Cooking up some dinner. Just roasted up a coffee. I've had this Snow Peak titanium cup for probably 2 years now. Really happy with it. Making a wrap with some steak. The moment I put all that steak in, pretty hungry. But yeah, for now, for a light setup, just got a magnetic torch on the back here. I do have a strip light to go on the awning there. I'll probably put that on a bit later, but yeah, no, loving this kitchen setup. I better get back to flipping the steak.
So Bruce did go back up when the weather cleared and shot this footage on his iPhone. As you can see, magic views. So it was great. This is Bruce's first time up to the Pinnacles, so it was really good that he got the opportunity to enjoy the view the way it should be enjoyed and take in the full vista. Well worth the effort to get there. It's a good sort of 10-15 minute walk up from the car park and a bit of a climb. You can see just in the distance there, that little shed is where the fire warden stays when they're actually manning the fire tower, and from there it's a climb up over the ridge. A fair few stairs involved to get up to where the actual fire tower is. So thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed this video. Please like the video if you liked it and comment down below. We've still got the rest of this trip to come. So Mount Wellington, Zika Spur, Wannangata. This was a really good trip. We took in so much of the high country and look forward to sharing it with you guys in the videos to come. See you in the next video.